Welcome back, friends. Brian Boesch, John Jansen here to talk another week of Michigan football. And we want to let you know what's going on MGO Blue podcast, already out this week. The radio replay of Inside Michigan Football. That happens on Monday nights. You can catch it live. But if you missed it, Sharon Moore joins us every single week. And then run game coordinator and running backs coach Tony Alford joined us in the middle of the program. And at the very end, Jordan Marshall coming off two great performances in the last couple of games, and both of them over 100 yards for Jordan Marshall. Defend the Block. It's a recap of Saturday night's game and the overtime win over St. John's. Still to come, Conquering Heroes. We're going to dive into the Hall of Honor recipients this year, inductees. And our first interview is with former softball coach Carol Hutchins. So that one is a tremendous one. So make sure you catch that one. In the Trenches. You know that's coming out Thursday afternoon, the preview edition, as well as after the game on Saturday. It's going to be a late one, 7 o'clock kick against Purdue. As soon as that one's done, Brian's going to work his magic and recap everything from what we're going to hear from Jason Avant, Doug Karsh, Brian and my's conversation, Jack Miller as well. That'll all be available for you after the game. At this time, you guys see him right there. It's the voice of Michigan basketball. You'll hear him exclusively on the Defend the Block. And I got to ask you, your early impression of this Michigan basketball team.
Well, I did say after the first game against Cincinnati, good thing it was an exhibition because they lost. And then I was sitting there at Madison Square Garden after overtime going, boy, it'd be nice to have that win on the resume if it really counted. Very early, but I thought that game showcased two teams that should be in the top 10, that have the talent prerequisites to be a Final Four contender. Who knows how it'll all break down? We've got a long way to go for that. Just think about the twists and turns of a Michigan football season, and the season started less than 2 months ago as we talked to you here. It's even longer, more games, more ebbs and flows, so definitely excited about it, but fun one there. And it's also big week for Halloween. You got your costume picked out?
I do have my costume.
Do you actually have a costume?
Yes. Yeah.
Good.
So a little Halloween party in the Jansen house. Since we're playing Purdue, Lucy will be heading home with some of her sorority sisters. So if they've got a group one, we have a contest in the Jansen house because Teddy came up to Lisa and I don't know, maybe a week ago and said he wanted to have a Halloween party.
Nice.
And when your 4-year-old asks you that, you go all in. So Lisa and I have our costumes picked out. Jack and Ellie also have theirs picked out. So big week in the Jansen house for the 4-year-old for Halloween.
This is the wife's family's favorite holiday, so
really?
Big time. Yeah. It's they go all out. Maybe if you bring some pictures of the costume, I'll bring some pictures of their house because it is like it's made the local news down in North Carolina. It's crazy, big time. But we are locked in on football here on In the Trenches, presented by Meyer. So let's get into it. And if you're joining us on the video side, be sure stay tuned. About 11:45, Flagman Jason Avant will stop by, give us his perspective on the Wolverines. You love that nickname.
Yes,
I think the only person who might not love it is Jason.
yeah.
For being honest.
And it's only when we make sure we enunciate and pronounce it correctly.
Yes. Very important. We've had a few of those
slip-ups.
Well, no, we haven't had a slip-up yet. No, we're still here. We have not had those slip-ups. We've had a few close calls on the tailgate show. That first segment of the tailgate show with John.
Zing-zang.
Very dangerous, yes. But Zing-zang's getting plenty of product placement verbally. Obviously, Michigan accomplished a goal on Saturday by knocking off Michigan State. So as we start our 7 from 77 here this week, just your overall takes. There's a lot that goes into that game, a lot of conversation, a lot of ramifications, all of it. What do you make of that game now that you have a few days to think about it?
The most important thing is just coming away with the win. Anytime you go up to East Lansing, anytime you play in this game, and everybody says, throw the records out, could be a challenge. There's been a lot of teams, a lot of really good Michigan football teams that have slipped up in East Lansing. So to come away with the win, to come away without the incidents, and whether it's post-snap, it's inside of the game itself, to have none of those on Michigan's side. You can walk right up to that line, as we've seen some players do, but you can't cross it. I thought they did a nice job of keeping their composure, especially at the end of the game, and all the way back to the locker room, no incidents. That's the next thing. And then when you look at some of the young players that were making their debuts in that game. And I know we'll talk about Blake Frazier in a little bit. I thought the secondary played well. I just thought that it wasn't a perfect game by any means. And yes, we'll talk about Bryce Underwood and the lack of passing attack. There's, I think, some key components as to why the numbers weren't bigger in the passing attack. But when you run for over 270 yards, why throw the ball? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So it's not our job to make them look better, or they've got to change what we're doing. So the running game was effective, and I thought it's one of those quality wins. It's not over a quality opponent, but you're in playoff mode, and it is win and you stay alive.
Hold that thought on the offense, because I want to get there. But number 2 on our 7 from 77, I've heard you be maybe as complimentary to the secondary as any unit coming off a game, especially a game where it wasn't against a top 10, top 15 type program, but it's a rivalry game. You've mentioned in some games you can't get higher than a B for some units, but I do think when you play a rivalry game, especially on the road, you can get an A. And it seems like the secondary got an A from you, even without Rod Moore.
Yeah, and I mean, playing without Rod Moore, that's obviously they're comfortable with it because they've done it before. But having him back out there and kind of being teased with Rod being back, it's that coach on the field. But when you look at Mason Curtis being healthy, and he's going to join us on the audio version later in the program or on the podcast, I think he's done a tremendous job. Brandon Hillman, where we know that he likes to have the big hit. And we certainly saw that on Saturday night, but being controlled when you come up for in the line of attack, to be able to have the right angles and ultimately come up with the tackle. I thought the secondary has done a really nice job at run support, but it really all comes down to how are they going to defend the pass? And a lot of these guys, they are playing 7 to 10 yards off at the line of scrimmage. Their reaction time, and I think Zeke Berry and Jair Hill both did a really nice job of this, of reacting to, hey, when that ball is thrown short coming up and making the play, you're going to have some completions, but as long as they're 4 or 5 yard completions. And when you look at Nick Marsh and his production in this game, targeted 13 times, only came up with 6 receptions. Now, some of that was Aiden Childs not being on the mark.
Sure.
Some of those balls were thrown away out of bounds. He just was the intended receiver. But there are also some really nice job done by Zeke Berry, a nice job done by Jair Hill of where they are in position. And the other thing I thought about was, when you look at Nick Marsh, one of his great assets is being able to make guys miss and yards after catch. Through 6 catches, he had 5 yak yards. And so, I mean, a tremendous job. And even their number 2 receiver, Marion Kelly, he had, 6 targets, 3 receptions. So I thought they did a nice job of contesting a lot of those balls in the secondary. And then you think about the job that, Cole Sullivan, Jimmy Rolder did in coverage as well, not just as a run support, not just as attacking the passer, but being, some of those extra guys that are dropping into coverage. I think they've done a tremendous job as well.
When you face an offense like Michigan State's, where there are a few guys who have high ceilings, but not a boatload of them, to be able to limit them the way that Michigan did was really impressive. We'll continue our 7 from 77 here momentarily. First, we got to tell you about Meijer, the presenting sponsor of In the Trenches, the 2025 Michigan football season, which is reaching the stretch run, and hundreds of teams across the Midwest.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this, with your help, we can provide meals to our hungry neighbors through Simply Give. With just $10, you can provide meals to local pantries serving families in need. Look for Simply Give donation cards at the checkout, or you can find them online as well. Together, we can provide a helping for those in need. Join us in our mission to help feed our hungry neighbors, because whenever you shop Meijer, you help people in our community to work, to play, to live, and to learn. Learn more at MeijerCommunity.com. Meijer is a proud presenting sponsor and fan of the 2025 Michigan football season.
So number 3 on our 7 from 77, let's talk about that offensive side. For Michigan, this is another example of where the Wolverines have leaned on the run. Sharon Moore talked about it on that radio replay of Inside Michigan Football. You can catch it on MGO Blue podcast feed. But there was very little reason to get away from it, says Coach Moore. And understandably so. Michigan got the job done. They won by probably a wider margin than it appears because of that late touchdown. I'll ask you this, John. Do you feel confident in the offense's upside and the passing game's upside as a whole? It's a question these times because of these circumstances. Do you feel confident in it as we stand here approaching November?
I do. Obviously, much more confident than us sitting here at the same time last year. I'd feel more confident if we had more performances like we saw against Washington, where Bryce was 21-27, and you count in some of those drops, it could have been better. We talked about that last week, but Andrew Marsh is quietly, and maybe not quietly, becoming the number one target for Bryce Underwood. You still have Donovan McCulley, and in talking to the coaches and in seeing practice, Channing Goodwin is still putting in a lot of work. He's going to continue to get more opportunity. But when you look at Jamar Browder, he's played in some games. He's played this 4, so it's not like they're saving him for the end of the season. That's what I thought maybe they were trying to do. Then I went back and looked at the snaps. No, he's played in 4 games. So now all of a sudden you look and I think he is a guy at 6'4", and I think he's about 210, 215, who can really stretch the field. He's got great speed. He's got tremendous reach and length at the wide receiver position. So I do like the fact that you're going to start adding him in and start seeing him more. So it's just another target. And in the passing game, I was a little disappointed after the production that we saw, the last week in terms of the tight ends. I thought they might be more involved. They might be bigger targets in that Michigan State game, especially with the defense and the way it was presenting itself. I thought the middle was there for the tight ends to be able to get more production. But I do think that this is a passing attack that continues to take steps forward. And I do like the where this is going. It was a little bit of a step back. There were more RPOs than I think people realized. It just happens to be whether there were, 13, 14 RPOs, only one of those ended up being thrown. The rest of them were handed off, which is why the run numbers are presenting the way they are. They're still calling those plays, and it's just a matter of Bryce making the right read and the defense giving you the read to be able to throw the ball. So it's going to open up. It's there. It's just we didn't see it against Michigan State.
Remember, there were times early in the season where people wondered about the upside, the usage of Bryce Underwood as a rusher, another touchdown run against Michigan State. And if you sack adjust the running game for Underwood, he's averaging just shy of 7 yards a carry. Not a huge number of carries because Michigan has some really good running backs to hand the football off to, but it's definitely there. Number 407 from 77. I'll tee it up with our comment here from Patrick on the YouTube stream. Frazier has some nasty to him. So, John, thoughts on Blake Frazier's first start at left tackle? Thoughts on what you saw from the offensive line in that run-heavy win against the Spartans?
Well, just in terms of technique, he kind of stole a little bit of my thunder there with the comment because, and I'll get to that in just a moment, but the X's and O's, right place, right time. He was doing the right thing. Now it's about execution and learning. You could tell that he took the film against Washington when he was in there and improved from that performance to what we saw against Michigan State. The 2-minute drill, which is a tough situation for any tackle to be in, but especially a young player on the road. You're not hearing the snap count, and you're trying to use your peripheral vision of, hey, when that ball is going to be snapped, and also keeping an eye on the defender. So you've got a lot of things going on. That's the next step for him, is to become that shutdown tackle. There was a couple of times where he just got off balance, maybe threw his hands a little bit early, but this is where, and I talked to Coach Alford yesterday on the Inside Michigan Football Show, and I asked him this question about the running backs in protection, noticing that in those moments, they did have an extra guy there, and if a linebacker comes, that's their responsibility. When it doesn't, they instantly look out and they scan. Do I need to help tackle? Guard, center, guard, tackle. They did a really nice job of being in position to help Blake when he needed it. So I thought that was nice. The run game, it was never a question for Blake if he was going to be able to be a run blocker. We've seen him brought in as that extra offensive lineman, and he's done a nice job. I like his pad level is low for being a tall kid. He's low. He comes off aggressive. And then for that comment, I have been waiting, and we see it a little bit from Andrew Sprague from time to time, that nastiness, that attitude out there. And you can, like I said, you can walk right up to that line, and you might dump a guy on that line, but you don't cross it. And we saw him do that in the fourth quarter. I love the mentality that he takes the field with. Now it's a matter of being more comfortable. And again, the X's and O's, he did a nice job. There's still room for improvement. But in terms of the attitude that he brings to that offensive line, once you pair all those things together, I really like what I'm seeing from Big 77.
And you talk about nasty. Sharon Moore used that word to describe right guard Jake Guarnera, another guy who did not start the season in that 5 injuries, created opportunities. You never want to see an injury, but it's created opportunities. Guarnera's run with it. Now Frazier seems to be
and I honestly, when the season's over, I wouldn't be surprised. Kripp has played really good, so he may get, quote unquote, offensive lineman of the year for this squad. Jake is right there. He has done a really nice job of just being technically sound, not trying to do too much, not trying to get outside, over top of his skis. But whether it's pulling, I think he's the best pulling guard that we have. He's done a nice job there. We saw a couple of examples on Saturday, but I think in pass protection, his balance has been there. And again, he's not knocking anyone's socks off, but he is just doing what is asked of them. And I think he has played extremely well.
Going to be a lot of fun to watch here for the Wolverines. All the youth is pretty remarkable. All right, number 5 on our 7 from 77, another playoff game for Michigan on Saturday. We've talked about the fact that there's been some little extra juice to pretty much every game since the Wisconsin game, right? USC, best team Michigan had left on the schedule on paper. Michigan lost. Then Washington, they'd come in red hot, 5-1. Looked like they were the best team on paper, of course, taking out the Buckeyes leading up to the game. And then Michigan State, the rivalry. This is not the case for Purdue, just 2 wins. They came against Ball State and Southern Illinois. They lost at the Horn to Rutgers at home this past Saturday. It's survive and advance when you're in a playoff spot. And Michigan, if they win every game the rest of the way by 3, they're probably still going to the playoffs. They'd be 10-2. But in this game in particular, with all due respect to Purdue, it's year 1 of a new era. Is this maybe just as much as an important aspect of the how Michigan gets there versus the what of getting the win? How they do it, how maybe emphatically they do it.
Yeah, and I mean, you probably caught me there drawing a little picture.
Oh, wow. I wasn't sure.
Marty Schottenheimer used this example for me when he took over for Washington, and I was going into my 3rd year. And one of the things that he had talked about is you're going to have some really good games and you're going to have some that are not so good. But that not so good game in week 2 versus that not so good game in week 8, the bottom, the very bottom of that trough needs to be higher than some of those good games that you had at the beginning of the season. And this is my very educated drawing. I'm trying to make sure that I don't have. Oh, there we go. So you want to make sure that, as Jim Harbaugh would say, you're an ascending team. All right. And
you are not an ascending artist.
This right here, this trough is better than the peak that you had in week 2. All right. That's the point of this exclusive drawing. Only here on In the Trenches, the video portion of the podcast. But it is. So when you look at it with a young team, young quarterback, young offensive line, young guys in the secondary, you're going to have a whole lot of, really good performances. And sometimes this will even happen in game. Really good and then not so good. Really good, not so good. And look at the season. All right, New Mexico, not a great measuring stick, but everything seemed to be looking really good. Then you play against Oklahoma, not so good. Then you play against USC. Your not so good against USC has to be better than it was against New Mexico. That's where this young team is starting to show signs of improvement because you play against Washington, and it's a really good performance. You play against Michigan State. Now you come away with a win, but it's not a great performance. So that's where you've got to have it. And if it is going to follow that course, all right, now you should see a great performance against Purdue. Again, more of an opponent like New Mexico in Purdue, but it's all for the buildup of where are you going to get to on this very sophisticated graph when you're, when you're playing against Ohio State. That's where it's got to be. And if you're sitting there going, okay, you got to beat Purdue, you got to beat Northwestern, and you've got to beat Maryland. It's going to take more against Northwestern and Maryland than it will against Purdue. But it's certainly going to take a better performance against Ohio State. We've seen this team do it historically in recent history. So that's where this team has to continue to progress so those lows are even better than your highs at the beginning of the season.
That was about as good as the back of the paper plate keys of the game, where John literally used to write his keys to the game on the back of a paper plate, and it was the full season on one plate.
Yeah, it's a live version somewhat of Jansen Vision.
Yes.
All right. That's just something you can see on Sunday mornings exclusively on the TV portion of Inside Michigan Football.
Yeah, and that's Jansen's vision drawn out on a piece of paper. All right.
It goes with, sometimes I have these whispers, some would call them voices in my head, that when they come to me, I have to actually put it on paper.
Well, let's see. David here said frame that. So maybe we'll auction that off for charity.
We'll start having some art here. We'll put it next to the logo.
Patrick and Colin would kill us. All right. Before we continue with our 7 from 77, hard to believe November is here. From a college football standpoint, November 1st, the next slate of games. Recruiting, though, still happening among college football fans. Isn't that right, John Jansen?
It is right, Brian. Thank you. You're being recruited by the Modelo Recruiter, who is looking to reward full-time fans who give their all for their team. So if you're listening to this, you're being recruited. And if you accept the offer, there's an ice-cold reward. It's a Modelo, the perfect reward for your fandom. Modelo, the official beer sponsor of college football playoffs.
All right. Big Ten notes now on number 6 here on this week's 7 from 77. The contenders, Ohio State, idle in the league. Indiana slowed down the previously red-hot UCLA Bruins. Oregon kind of played with its food a little bit, but did hold on to beat Wisconsin. 3 matchups of 5-2 teams last week. Iowa probably the most impressive. They just bludgeoned Minnesota. Washington, a pretty handy win over Illinois, a rough season for a highly anticipated one for Brett Bielema and the Illini. And then Nebraska edged Northwestern. Biggest takeaways from what you saw with, the 5-2 teams that lost, they're done from the Big Ten and from the college football playoff conversation. But, Iowa's now kind of in that bubble. It looks like Big Ten safely got 3 in right now. Maybe Iowa can make it interesting.
Yeah, and everybody's kind of looking at who's going to be that 4th team. Obviously, we'd like to have a say in that. We can if you win out.
Control the destiny.
And Iowa. Tell me if you've heard this story before. A top-ranked team going to Kinnick Stadium and taking a loss.
Sure.
Iowa and Oregon will play, and it's going to be in Kinnick Stadium. So Iowa's doing everything they possibly can to give themselves at that 4th spot in the college football playoffs. I don't know how it all plays itself out as we go. Was it next week that we get the first? Is it next week, or is it within the next 2 weeks? We're going to get the first,
committee rankings.
Committee rankings.
Yep.
So we'll find out where is everybody stacking up 1 through 25. We'll obviously take a look at the top 12, and Iowa's holding on right there. Their offense has shown some signs of life in the last couple of weeks. I don't know if they can beat Oregon or not. It will be at home, so I think that's going to be a huge factor. And then Washington. I think they're just a team that continues to find they find ways to win games, and that win that Michigan had over Washington looks a little bit better now as Washington basically dismantles the Fighting Illini.
And same with Nebraska, right? Yeah. Doing that on the road. I don't think either of us believe that Washington or Nebraska are true national championship contenders, but at least from Washington's standpoint, they're in the exact same spot Michigan is.
Yep.
They will likely be favored in the rest of their games before the regular season finale. Michigan gets its rival at home.
Mm-hmm.
Washington gets its rival, Oregon, at home. Another thing on Iowa, they played Indiana incredibly closely.
Yep.
For all the dominance Indiana's had this year, it was a nail-biter at Kinnick that Indiana barely held on to. This weekend, how about Ohio State as a 3-touchdown favorite? To put into perspective, that game was one of the most highly anticipated in the Big Ten coming into this season. And the spreads are pretty much even for Ohio State hosting Penn State as Indiana traveling to Maryland.
I know.
That's how far they've fallen.
And, it's how far they've fallen, but it's also how high Indiana has risen.
100%.
And the fact that they went out to Oregon, did what they did out there, that was going to be their big matchup. I know Indiana plays Penn State in a couple of weeks, but no one's looking at that as a statement game anymore. And so Indiana being a top 2 team in the country, there's a lot of people, including me, that think that they should be ranked number 1 overall. And if all the chips fall the way that those outside of Ann Arbor think they will fall, it could be it could be Indiana and Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. And it's another opportunity for Indiana to stake that claim. Now, last year, they obviously fell to Ohio State. That game was in Columbus, I believe.
Yeah, and that was a blowout.
And
It
was a blowout.
Yep.
Then they go to the college football playoffs and lose to Notre Dame. So everybody was wondering, was Indiana really real? This year, it feels like they're much more real. And Mendoza, their quarterback, is playing at an elite level. He might be the first quarterback taken in the draft this upcoming April. So there's a lot of eyeballs on on pretty much every game that Indiana is going to be playing.
And the reality is, with the change in the playoff bracketing standpoint from top 4 conference champions to top 4 overall teams, that'll, if it is undefeated Ohio State, undefeated Indiana, that both those teams are almost certainly getting a bye if they're 12-0. So I'll be curious kind of how that plays out. Now, the reason why I'm not going to focus a whole lot on the playoff aspect, and I think the Big Ten as a whole, it's pretty obvious how this all has to play out. And from Michigan's standpoint, don't worry about the rankings.
Yeah.
If Michigan keeps winning, they're going to make the playoff. If Michigan keeps winning, they might make the Big Ten championship game. They really only need 1 or 2 other things to go their way.
Right.
And I don't even know all the tiebreakers. We'll see. If Michigan keeps winning, who cares what the committee says on November 4th? That's the 1 week is the first committee reveal.
Right. And so, yeah, it doesn't matter. You need some help. You don't control your own destiny in regards to the Big Ten championship game, but you do control your own destiny in regards to the college football playoffs. Yep. If you went out, you beat Ohio State at the end of the season, you finished the regular season 10-2, you're going to be in the playoffs. Yep. as a Big Ten team, especially. And I know nobody wants to hear it, but especially with the brand that Michigan is.
No doubt, 100%. Other interesting game this week, Big Ten, Nebraska at home. Sorry, I think they're at USC. I forget. But
I think it's at home versus USC.
Okay, but they're an underdog, which is interesting. Yeah. So why don't you double check that one as we go into our national topics. Number 7 on 7 from 77. SEC wise, Texas A&M rolls LSU in the second half, and then there was a slight conversation in Baton Rouge on Saturday into Sunday that apparently involved the governor of the state of Louisiana, the AD, Brian Kelly. He drove away. He's done. Thoughts on all of that?
It's a bizarre. In fact, it is at Nebraska.
Okay, thank you.
And so, I mean, we've seen Brian Kelly lose his mind on the sidelines before, and whether it was at a coach, whether it was at a player. I mean, then you see and you hear everything that went on after the game, and it did include the governor of the state of Louisiana. It's a bizarre year in college coaching, and it's at a time where I didn't think we would see these large buyouts happen with rev share, NIL, all of the different things that athletic departments are dealing with, even in the best of times. If you go back a decade and you don't have rev share, you don't have NIL, there's still only a handful of college athletic departments that end up in the black every single season. Now, with Penn State and over $50 million in buyouts, with LSU Florida. And Florida. I mean, it's just, and there's going to be more coaches that are in this position where, hey, it's the Indiana effect. It's the Vanderbilt effect, where if you spend enough money on NIL and you had those transfers, if your program is not there or it's not meeting the standards, they're going to pull the ripcord, and they expect the next coach within a year or two to be a college football playoff contender. So I don't necessarily agree with that philosophy, but that's what happens when you have a lot of donor money coming into a university. They probably have a bigger voice.
Well, and there are going to be bigger, more high-profile big jobs than there will be no-brainer candidates for it.
Right.
Kurt Cignetti already re-upped again at Indiana. Hasn't happened at Vandy yet, but, I mean, their coach, Clark Lee, he is a Vanderbilt alum. I find it hard to believe if they are contending for a playoff spot. Now, if they miss, all bets are off, because that's where the portal and all that makes sense. But if they have a chance, if they keep winning, and they got a big one this week coming up at Texas, if they're in the playoff, I have a hard time believing he'll be looking for another job when he knows he could probably go 0-12 the next year and still probably get a job.
Well, he may go 0-12. I mean,
so you kind of give
the loyalty is, there's one aspect that we're not talking about. One, it's yes, the buyouts, but it's the contracts that are still being doled out. So if Vanderbilt doesn't, if they have a limit on how much they can pay their football coach, even though he played there, even though that we all know that's where his loyalties lay, the loyalty to his family and his kids and his kids' kids and generations to come, if somebody comes a call and it says, we're going to pay you 3 times what Vanderbilt is willing to pay you, or 4 times, and we're going to give you a couple of years, and if it doesn't work out, we'll just pay you and you'll be on your way, that's hard to turn down.
100%. And I am not saying he's going to be there for his entire coaching career. I'm just saying, with the unique setup of the college football calendar now, if you are in the playoff, it's really tough to hire someone in the playoff because that portal is so valuable.
It is.
We'll see.
It is. It's a challenge.
No doubt. Otherwise, Alabama survives at South Carolina by 7. Ole Miss wins over Oklahoma. The Rebels, 7-1. They seem very likely to be a playoff team. Talked about Vandy. They knocked off Missouri in a grinded-out defensive game by 7. Texas keeps its playoff hopes alive. OT win at Mississippi State. Mentioned it. Basically a coin flip game according to odds makers. Vanderbilt at Texas. Imagine telling you that at the start of the year that will be the line on that game. Georgia and Florida square off, the neutral site game in Jacksonville, and likely a playoff elimination game, Tennessee and Oklahoma in Knoxville. That one, Michigan should be rooting for the Sooners.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it goes to building the resume for Michigan. Whether it's Washington, you want to keep winning because you beat them and they have a chance to beat some good teams. Nebraska finds ways to win games. They're now bowl eligible. You look at all these teams, even Oklahoma, you want them to keep winning. USC, you want them to keep winning because it just continues to bolster that resume for Michigan.
Well, I think this week we probably want USC to lose to Nebraska. Just from you'd rather have your wins be better. That's we're splitting hairs at that point. But regardless, one team will win, one team will lose. ACC, Georgia Tech, still unbeaten. They win over Syracuse. Virginia survives in Chapel Hill. 17-16 in overtime. Boy, hey, almost.
Yes, it was literally inches.
I know. It was crazy. Remember, Miami, they lost. It is a situation where Georgia Tech and Virginia do not play. They're both undefeated in the ACC. The ACC might be rooting for Miami to not make the ACC championship game because that probably guarantees the ACC at least 2 teams in the playoffs. Interesting ones. A lot of road games for ACC contenders. Georgia Tech at NC State, not a heavy favorite. Miami at SMU. SMU just lost their first ACC game since joining, which was a wild stat. They lost at the buzzer by like another couple inches at Wake Forest. Virginia at Cal. That's not a gimme. Don't forget about Louisville. They're 6-1. The Cardinals go to Virginia Tech. We'll talk Big 12 in a moment, but I think the ACC is more likely to get multiple teams in the Big 12 as it stands right now.
Yeah, and not a surprise. I think if you're going to rank, the 4 power conferences, the Big 12 would be 4th. And so if you're going to get an extra team, maybe a 3rd team in, if this is a year where the Big 10 only gets 3 or maybe, possibly 4, it's going to be from the ACC. And, I don't know that I'm necessarily a fan of any of the ACC teams, but I do think that Georgia Tech is a great story. I think they get to that final week of the season, probably undefeated. That's when they play Georgia down in Atlanta. That's going to be a huge moment for that program and that team. And so there is some excitement about some of the teams in the ACC.
And in the Big 12, BYU stays unbeaten. They take down Iowa State. Texas Tech blanks, I think 1 win, Oklahoma State. Cincinnati, a team that's hanging around. They've only lost 1 time. They beat Baylor. Utah annihilates Colorado. And Houston is 7-1 as the Cougars win at Arizona State. Game day this week is in Salt Lake City. Cincinnati at Utah. Texas Tech goes to Kansas State. Houston entertains 2 in West Virginia. This feels like a hold-serve kind of week in the Big 12. The ACC is the one with a lot of contenders on the road.
There are. And, I mean, all eyeballs are going to be on Miami. Can they continue to play at the level that they did against Stanford? And at kind of the end of that game, I'm not sure why Miami was, trying to score that last touchdown against Stanford. But they did. And, again, they're trying to make a statement after a really tough loss.
No doubt. All right, transition time for you on the audio side. We'll catch up with Mason Curtis. On the video side, we've got one of our absolute favorites. He's at home. I wasn't sure if you were traveling today or not, Jason, but great to see you, my friend. Hard to believe November football starts this weekend. You ready to roll?
I am ready to go. How you guys doing?
Good. It's always good to see you, man.
You guys too. Guys looking good.
Right back at you. What's the hat? It looks like a play.
That's a Philly special.
Oh, nice. All right.
You and your Philly stuff.
Yeah.
Hey,
Nick Cole was one of my favorite teammates ever.
That's cool. That's cool. I just want to see some Michigan stuff on his Eagles pregame content. That's what we need to see.
I got you.
Is that going to happen?
Hey, so I got to ask you this. Brandon Graham was on the sidelines against Washington. He comes out of retirement. Did he tell you at the time that he was going to come out of retirement? Were you holding back on us?
Yeah, I knew for some time.
Did he ask you to join too?
Well, no, that's old. Now that's the geriatric community right there on the Eagles. You don't want that right there.
Come on, you can stabilize that wide receiver room.
I knew for some time now, but he loves it, and the funniest thing, we were on the same flight back home to Philly. So him and Carla, his wife, and his kids, and I'm sitting there playing with his son who loves ball. I'm throwing their football at him in the airport. I feel so bad because it's almost knocking past random people in the head with the ball. But we're sitting there talking the whole time, and he let me know again, and so I'm excited for that.
LW commenting here, Jason still looks 21 years old. So you're saying you can't quite play like the 21-year-old, but hey, you could, the profile pic on Eagles.com wouldn't stand out.
Yeah, so maybe I look 21 there, but my body is about 75.
All right, give us your perspective. That was the second time you were up in East Lansing on the sidelines. Just what are your takeaways from all that the rivalry is and what you saw between the lines on Saturday?
You know what? I love that atmosphere. Love what the rivalry means. I thought Michigan State was drawing from, the start of the game. I usually stand where the opposing team is for warm-ups, and they were into it. They had their music going. They had banter back and forth with the crowd. The players know each other. You've seen a lot of communication between teams, also coaches to coach. So there's a lot of familiarity there. So it brings a lot to the rivalry. And I thought that Michigan, kind of imposed their will. There were some times where they, appeared in that game where it was kind of up in the air because they squandered so many opportunities and Michigan allowed Michigan State to stay in the game. But second half, when they made adjustments to run the ball, it was just them, imposing their will. So I thought that was my big takeaway.
I want to start on the secondary with you because we were talking on Saturday night about how good the secondary was playing against maybe not a great quarterback in terms of being able to throw the ball, but a good couple of wide receivers. I'd like to get your take on what you saw in the secondary, whether it was coverage skills, being able to pull the trigger and come up and run support. I thought that might have been their best game to this point this year.
Yeah, they're getting more comfortable in their skin, and I thought Jair Hill was kind of the catalyst for that, and having the assignment at times because in this game he did something that he hadn't been doing. He was charged to go inside a lot more. If you guys notice, he was inside a bunch, and so he was able to reroute guys. And what that basically means is that if there's a bunch formation, if you can jam the guy at the point, it throws off the timing for the other two guys that are behind him. And he was able to do that successfully, multiple plays, and just get in people's face and throw off timing. That's what you have to do. It's not always a win where you're covering them down the field, but if you can get in their face and discourage the quarterback from throwing an easy pass, it helps a bunch, and it forces that quarterback to be pinpoint accurate and also make the proper decision. So I thought they were more aggressive. I thought that they didn't have fear of, Amari Kelly, and they didn't have fear of Nick Marsh. They didn't have any fear at all. They approached it like, okay, we're better than them. And that was my overall takeaway from the secondary. I felt like that they thought that they were better, and they didn't feel like the guys can run by them.
How about Jimmy Rolder? 10 tackles, 9 of them solo, 2 TFLs, a sack. Wink Martindale likes a few other players as much as Jimmy Rolder. He doesn't like anybody more than Jimmy Rolder. His story's fascinating. His journey has been turbulent at times, but how would you describe the impact he has, especially at field level? Because Sharon Morse called him a hammerhead. It shows up from 5-6 stories up. Yeah. It shows up on the TV. How do you see it?
It's like, I don't know if you guys remember a couple years ago, we were at Maryland and they had a kid named Bo Braid, right? He made every single play in that game for Maryland. I don't know if you guys remember that. Yeah. And that's what this game reminded me of Jimmy Rolder. It was one of those games where every big-time play that needed to be made, he made that. 2 critical 4th down stops, fumble recovery, in coverage, doing everything. And so it's just an embarrassment of riches from that linebacker position when it comes to Cole Sullivan and Hausman and Jimmy Roder. And then you have Barham there as well. So Jimmy Roder played outstanding this game. So as soon as I got into the locker room, I knew one of those game balls for sure was going to Jimmy Roder. I'm talking about playing out of his mind.
Good memory, by the way. Braid, 11 tackles. That was Michigan's 1,000th win. Yeah, he led the way.
Dude,
Absolutely.
on the 1,000th win, dude, he was everywhere. And I was like, that's what the game reminded me of.
That's
the
still
first thought.
Yeah. That game still, I mean, you think about 23. There were so many blowouts. That game was borderline terrifying. I mean, it was wild. But yeah, 11 tackles. Good memory.
And I want to ask you next about the first time that Michigan had the ball, right? Jimmy Roder gets the fumble recovery. They take it. Michigan then gets it down on the 6-yard line, and it's first and goal from the 6. First play is a run. They take half the distance, and they get down to the 3-yard line. Now it's second and goal from the 3. The next 2 plays are passes. If you're in that situation with a freshman quarterback, and we know everything is tight down there. I keep going back to, why wouldn't you just ram it right down their throats, set the tone? What did you think about play selection when they got inside the 10-yard line?
You know, you always think that once you pass it and it's a failure or the play's not successful, you're forced to kind of pass it again. So I just thought that I don't think that they wanted to do that, but they got into a situation where they felt like, okay, we need to, kind of right the wrong. And so it ended up in another pass. But yes, I agree with you. Michigan's strength is their ability to run the ball. And I think that if you run the ball 2 more times, you may get an opportunity on 4th down to go for it. But if you continue to be behind the sticks, you eliminate that opportunity for 4th down. And that's one thing about being in Philadelphia. It's like they just relish to get to 4th down, to a 4th and 1 situation so they can tush push, right? So I view that down as, especially on the goal line, because the team will have 98, 99 yards to go. It's a positive if you can get it down there. Therefore, running the ball earlier and often when you're down inside the 5-yard line is beneficial for any team. So, yes, I agree with you this time, John. Very rarely will you get me to agree with running the ball over pass.
Is there a tush push hat like your Philly special one that they sell?
That
wouldn't be as exciting.
Yeah, that one. It would be imprinted on the back of the hat, and it's one that you wouldn't want to be seen on camera.
So a lot is made of just how much Michigan goes to the run. I think we all agree that Michigan's 25 offensive upside is closer to the 23 upside than the 24 upside, right? In 2023, we ran as much as we could because the games were blowouts. Michigan was dominant up front, all that. 24, last year, it was what Michigan really only had as its option. Yeah, how much closer in your eyes, Jason, is Michigan's upside, the potential, and let's be honest, thinking about the game, how Michigan can counter Ohio State's defense, can sustain drives, can have success. How close is it to that 23 group from an upside case?
They have a lot of upside. Saying the 23 group is just a special group. I don't necessarily know if it can get to that this year. Now, but when it comes to like the passing side of it, there's just a few things that need to be cleaned up. And I talked about this, kind of after the game. There's times where Bryce is doing a good job of getting the ball out of his hands and trying to locate the guys. But with a guy like Donovan McCulley, you don't have to throw a laser at him on the sideline. You need to give him enough time to be able to adjust that big body and make a play on the ball. So more of that layup throw on the sideline rather than a dart that's like back shoulder. If that pass isn't perfect, you get no opportunity to make a play on the ball. So I think that will make a big difference of just throwing a softer, more catchable ball on the sideline of Donovan McCulley. But you're starting to see some of the receivers kind of break out. Andrew Marshall is becoming one of those guys. And I talked to him, at the end of that game because I knew right away on that first catch that he had on the sideline. I knew right away he lost that ball in the light. I knew right away from
Yeah.
receiver. I'm like, dude, he jumped up and he was like, dude, that was a house call. And so you see these guys getting better and better and better. And I think that if Bryce continues to develop and understand blitz recognition a little bit more and not get rattled and, you know, when there's a lot of pressure and learn how to put touch on some passes. I'm not saying that it has to be every pass because I believe that any quarterback that I ever played with, the ones that throw hard, if you ask them to throw softer, they become inaccurate. So I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that, but there are certain passes that are naturally softer, sideline throws. Those should be jump ball situations. You have to give a guy a chance more.
So I know you don't get a chance to be at practice, but you get a chance to see these guys on the sidelines. You get a chance to see them warm up. Jamar Browder, when you're standing around him, what do you think the potential is, or what have you heard about him in regards to being a bigger part of this offense in the final 4 or 5 weeks of the season?
Yeah, I talked to Soup and I talked to Ron. Pretty much, those are the first two guys that I communicate with. Once I get down there, they really like him a bunch. He's a big kid. Mm-hmm. From my viewpoint, just my viewpoint, I think it's going to take a little bit more time of him getting in and out of his break. So, for an example, if he has a curl route and Andrew Marsh can run that curl route in 3 steps to get out of it and run it back to the quarterback, it may take him 5 steps, right? So getting that big body down and learning how to navigate his body in order to win is going to be more of a challenge for him when it comes to intermediate and short game routes, which is most of your routes as a receiver. Then you have your down the field throws, which he probably will be able to succeed now. But I'm sure if I know Coach Campbell and I know Ron, they're going to want him to be able to help in all facets of the game. So if you throw him in right now, he'll be able to do some jump balls for you and make some plays down the field. But remember, if there are 60 offensive plays, you're only going to get 4 of those as a receiver, 5 of those maybe. So you have to be able to do other things well. And it's hard for a freshman to do those other things well.
What are some of those other things? You know, like great job of explaining, you know, the 5 steps versus the 3 steps when you watch Andrew Marsh versus Jamar Browder. In terms of the mental side of things, what is the challenge for a receiver to be able to get out there and just receiver coaches and Sharon to trust him that he knows? Because in this offense, there's a lot of read routes. There's a lot of option routes. What are the challenges mentally of being able to grasp this offense and being able to operate not necessarily at 100%, but you got to be closer to 75 or 80%?
You got it depends on the kid. It depends on the kid. And I'll give you the example of me. I was pissed that I didn't play the first game against Washington as a freshman. Like, I was pissed. I didn't play. And I felt like I beat out the guys that were there. The only 2 guys that should have been in front of me that I thought that should have been in front of me was Ron, Coach Bellamy now, and Braylon Edwards. That's the only 2 guys that I felt like was better than me at that time. So I went to the coach and I said, hey, what am I doing wrong? Because I can't see what you see. And Coach Campbell said, well, you make an MA or a mental error, mental mistake, you know, whatever it may be, you know, this amount of time. So you got to cut those out in order to get on the field. And so from Browder's standpoint is that he has to have that hunger in him to not make those errors. And so what I did was I went over my playbook and I made sure that when I was in there that I didn't make another error that entire season. I made sure if that's my only reason for not playing, it will not be because I didn't study hard. So I think it's going to take an adjustment for him, but that's just want to. When you've been in a program a long time, that has to do with want to, and that has to do with desire. And I'm not saying anything about him at all. I'm just talking about in general. When it comes to the playbook and you're in the system for this amount of time, that's desire and want to.
Well, I want to talk a little offensive line. D-Ray commenting Frazier is really good, and Dakota Kid. I was thinking about a nasty lineman, wondering if we'd ever see a lineman like Steve Everett ever again. Sharon Moore has mentioned that Jake Guarnera has some nasty in him. Have you seen the swagger, the attitude of this Michigan offensive line increase over the course of this season? Because if you just look at the shuffling, right, based on injuries, Michigan has not had a consistent group like they did for much of that 23 run, much of those back-to-back Joe Moore award-winning seasons. But how do you sense that group coming together, getting nastier down there on the sidelines?
They're together group. They are a together group. They don't complain. They work together. They are constantly talking between Coach Castile, Coach Grant, and the players. They constantly communicate. And yes, do you see the swagger begin to go when Justice breaks one for a long one or Jordan does? Yes, they relish that. They feel like, okay, we're the ones that got that touchdown. And so you see that from Sprague a little bit. You see that from, Crip and other guys at times. Do I think it's consistent enough where they feel like the 23 team, where that 23 team just they were just butt kickers, and the other team knew it. It's not just about you thinking it. Does the other team act like it? So they have to get to the position where other teams think that they're butt kickers, the entire time. So and so you can see the fear in other teams. Like the other teams, like, dude, we have to be on our A game in order to face this offensive line. So I think they're getting there. Yes.
Now that you've seen Bryce in a number of different situations, whether it's on the road or at home against different levels of opponents, where is Bryce Underwood in his development, and what do you expect to see from him in the coming weeks against, let's just face it, inferior opponents?
Well, he's grown a lot when it comes to just maturity, handling the media, the way he's approaching the game, just from my perspective of being down there. He communicates a lot more. He takes the responsibility. Like I said, I think that he understands the offense and what is required of him. Understanding what throw needs to be made on each particular play, I think that is going to come with a little bit more time, because there's a time to deliver one that's a gas fastball. Then there's a throw that has to be layered, that has to go over the linebackers and underneath the safeties, and all of that is touch and feel and time. And so do I love his progression? I do. From Oklahoma game to where we are now, I think it's much different. He protects the football. He is done that pretty much the entire season, and he's given guys shots. So I think that there's a lot to be improved upon, but I like the trajectory of Bryce Underwood. And I just think that it's the expectations of Michigan is always to win a championship. And all of that pressure is on this kid because of the NIL and how he got here and all of that stuff. And I just think that's unfair a little bit, because the expectation is so great. But I think under the circumstances, he is doing an exceptional job for the player that he is in the position that he is. He's a freshman. And we got to, despite the money, despite the expectation, you got to understand that he's a freshman and he's being charged with a lot, and he's excelling at that.
Yeah. I mean, we had conversations about the true upside of JJ McCarthy till the very end, right? Till the very end.
Yeah.
And the expectations were similar. It'll be interesting to see how this develops, but obviously 8 games in, tough to say anything but good things about how Bryce has handled it. A few more minutes with Jason Avant. If you've got any final questions in the comments with Jason, fire him away. I'll ask you this. John alluded to, schedule-wise, Michigan will be favored the rest of the way until they get the Buckeyes. If you could lock in one improvement, progress, something on each, the offense and the defensive side of the ball between now and Ohio State, what would you add into this offense and defense that they will develop in the next 28 days to get ready for Ohio State?
I think that we have to do a better job on third downs, third down play calling and third down execution is going to have to be much better than it is. There's just too many times in the game where we're just out there as an offense. offensively where you can go a quarter and a half, 2 quarters with not much production. You're not going to do that and be able to beat Ohio State this particular year unless the defense just goes berserk like they've done against Washington and, this past game. So I think that you're going to have some creative play calls. And I think that the receivers and the quarterbacks, tight ends, are going to have to execute a lot better on those downs and distances. So I think that's something that's going to need to improve. And now, as far as defensively, what does it always come down to for the defense? I think that we should be able to handle anyone's run game, especially with the adjustments and the time that Wink has. I think that with the exception of USC and a few other plays, I think that our run game defensively will be good, but there's going to be times where the guy in the slot and Zeke Berry, and they're going to be challenged down the field. And I don't necessarily know if we've seen enough challenges from this group down the field, like Ohio State can present with Tate and Jeremiah Smith. So with that being said, I want to see, once the ball is down the field, how the guys react with the ball in the air from the corner position. Because I think that second corner is still a bunch of guys playing, right? You have Zeke some days, you have Sanders some days, you have, other guys playing some days. So I think that will be a tell for me.
Yeah, and from my perspective, in regards to being able to get the ball downfield, because I think Andrew Marsh, if he's not already seen as the number one, I think he will be by the end of the season. It's not to take away from Donovan McCulley, because like you mentioned earlier, right, it's sometimes you just got to throw the ball up and let him be the player and the athlete that he is. But it's getting to those opportunities, allowing those guys to get downfield. That means pass protection has to be better. And I think with Blake being in there, experience is going to be vital for him and how he utilizes that film, because he's a little bit of a better athlete. He's got better foot movement, a little bit better balance. It might allow in the coming weeks for them, whether it's against Purdue, Northwestern, or Maryland, to experiment with being able to get the ball downfield more, simply because I think Bryce will have more time.
Yeah, like I want to piggyback on you. So Donovan, this is just my personal opinion. Donovan is an on-the-move player. His body, he's a big guy, and he needs to stay moving. So what does that mean? He runs slant routes. He runs fades. He runs posts. He runs daggers. He runs in cuts. He runs out cuts. But the stop, redirection, stuff like that, you leave that for Andrew Marsh, Samaj, and other players. I think you put him in a great position when you allow him. And guess what? That's not a bad thing. Guess who didn't run a bunch of stop routes at the University of Michigan? Braylon Edwards, because they had Steve and I to do that, right? So Braylon was a guy that was always on the move. Therefore, the yards after the catch is great. Therefore, the big plays down the field, right? You give these guys a role, but if you ask him to run, a 10 or 12-yard stop on third down, it's not always his strongest suit. So give it over to Andrew Marsh or Samaj, right? So I think giving players a chance to succeed and figuring out what they are good at, I think that's, the next stage of this offense as well.
Some commenters weighing in with, what you could add to this team. Jeff Dresser, special teams and wide receivers. Robert, playing fundamentally sound football, not turning the ball over and finishing drives will be key. And also, haven't heard from Tropicana Banana, great name. Some more hooks, curls, and comeback timing routes, and maybe some back shoulder throws would be nice to work on. And also, Jason, Tropicana Banana says, boy looks like Tupac toward you.
There's your Halloween costume.
I got nothing. I wish I had Tupac's money.
Yeah.
But before we let you go and sign off, John, will you show Jason your art from earlier today?
Oh yeah, this is.
I want you to do this, Jason. Hold on. Why don't Jason? Can you tell us what John was trying to indicate earlier on the show with this drawing?
I can't see it. You gotta bring it closer. No, it's white piece of paper from my
side. Okay, darn. All right. Yeah, well, hopefully those at home are able to see that. We're an ascending team, and the graph is to show that there are going to be some games like against Washington where you're playing really
stock
good.
market.
Yeah, See, this is a common analogy amongst NFL veterans.
He had a better chance to describe it if he just saw the white piece of paper than if he would have saw you draw. But still autograph it. It'd be great.
Yeah.
Jason, always appreciate the insight, my friend. Looking forward to seeing you back here at the Big House. Don't draw anything against me. Come on.
I'm autographing again.
Oh, perfect.
There you go.
Fantastic. Yes. Look forward to donating $3 to a local charity. Always appreciate it, Jason. Thanks for coming by, man. We'll see you here on Saturday for Purdue.
All right. See you guys.
There's Jason Avant. That was a cool hat too. I
Yeah,
like
it was
that.
a cool hat,
What would your play if you could get one play on a hat drawn out? What would it be?
Oh shoot! I mean, it would be our counterplay, and it would be obviously with Hutch and Backus. They'd be the pullers, and it would be me and Mark Campbell kicking the crap out of.
Sure.
I had to censor myself there.
Thank you.
Kicking the crap out of a 5 technique up to a backer, and it's just it's what we ran in '96 on that drive against Ohio State. Is what we ran against Iowa in '97 when we were salting the clock away at the end. But yeah, so that would be it. Yeah.
If you got a blank hat, you could do the play for when you were listed eligible.
Yeah, it would be blank. Yes. Or I just have one with me and a defensive lineman and me killing him.
With an X and an O or whatever, yes. David saying, I have some old graph paper for you, John. So that's good. And then David also saying, Avant is great. Yes, very much appreciate Jason coming by. And Lauren, our right end game needs to be more consistent for Bryce. Tight end game, not right end game. Yeah, that is an area. It has been a little surprising with the depth that Michigan's had. Huge game a couple weeks ago against Washington with some of the newcomers emerging or the lesser known names.
Yeah.
But certainly the fact that one consistent threat has not emerged is a little bit surprising.
It is. And some of that's just been health. Like Marlon Klein's been in, he's been out. Hogan Hansen's been in, he's been out. We saw how good Hogan Hansen can be. We saw that more last year, but he's just been dinged up. Now, Zach Marshall's been consistent. I'd like to see the ball find him a little bit more. Deacon Tonelli, it was a nice find a couple of weeks ago. So there are options at that tight end position. And some of it just simply comes down to the tight end position is rarely the number one read for a quarterback. And some of it is just simply protection needs to be there to be able to go from 1, 2 to 3. But it's also Bryce has to be comfortable enough to get through those reads quickly enough to get to the tight end.
Last comment, Joel, could you handle beating Ohio State, losing to Indiana in the Big Ten championship, and missing the playoff with 3 losses? I really don't think that would happen where Michigan would miss, because that has been treated in the early stages of this 12-team setup as an extra game where it really couldn't hurt you a whole lot. Now, if Michigan gets blown out by Indiana, maybe it's a slightly different story if they're right on the bubble. But I think I'd be shocked if there were a scenario where Michigan wins out in the regular season, gets to Indy, loses in that game. It would probably be to Indiana or maybe Oregon and misses the playoff. A lot would have to go against Michigan elsewhere for Michigan to be the 13th team in that set.
And I'll take the loss out of it for right now and just say I'd like to be in that position.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to earn the right to be in that position. If you beat Ohio State, you're obviously going to be playing really good football at that time. And I'd like that opportunity to go back to Indianapolis and play whoever it is, whether it's Indiana, Oregon, I don't care. Just give us that opportunity.
And we talked about, for instances earlier, and David said Ohio State can't be undefeated. He's calling his shot. We got to see if Michigan can get to the point where it is 9-2 Michigan against whatever Ohio State might be. And hey, you always talk about it. You want to be undefeated for that game because you want their best. And if Michigan's 9-2 and they beat 11-0 Ohio State, Michigan will be in the playoff unless true chaos happens. Little chaos on this show, but we had a lot of fun. Great comments, great guest with Jason. And next week, the bye week grades are back. Professor Jansen will have some fancier graphics, though, than the chart, though. I promise you that.
I'll bring a Sharpie.
Yeah.
See it better.
Thank you. Perfect. All right. For John and Jason, I'm Brian. Thanks, as always, for watching. We'll catch you next week for a bye week edition here on the Michigan Athletics YouTube channel and at John Jansen 77.